up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Growth Blueprint. In this episode, we're going to be talking about menopause. This one's going to be not a super long episode, but I think it's super necessary. And really just because I've had tons of conversations with women over the last probably since the beginning of the year, since January, about menopause and about hormones and what they can do, and all these conversations focused around having better energy, feeling better, losing weight, just feeling better, all that kind of stuff that goes along with going through menopause. So those of you out there that are either going through menopause or have gone through it know exactly what I'm talking about. And those of you that haven't gone through it yet, pay attention so that you don't get caught by surprise here. But I'm just going to very basically walk you through what menopause is, how it happens, and what you can do to combat that. So first of all, to kind of set the stage here, I'm a physiologist. I have a hormone, peptide, and weight loss clinic that we help women deal with menopause symptomology, weight management, feeling good, all that kind of stuff on a regular basis, right? So, and part of the reason that my business partner and I started this was because I noticed that there were a lot of women not getting the kind of service that they needed from their primary care, from their OBGYNs around support with menopause and weight management in particular. And so, it blows me away. It blows me away because this isn't rocket science. It's going to make a lot of sense as I walk you through it because it's very simple. It's very simple. Right? It sucks to go through. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying that understanding the process that you're going through, understanding it from a physiological perspective is really easy. It's not rocket science. And treatment for the symptomology is it's rather easy. It's relatively simple. And it's not that expensive either. And so I just don't know why so many women are being done the disservice that they're being done by their primary cares, by their OBGYNs, when it comes to dealing with menopausal symptoms. Whether that is fighting to get your labs done, because that is a very common issue that lots of women that I talk to, they can't get anybody to actually look at their hormones in general. So again, that's why we do a lot of that with our clinic. Or if they do get their hormones looked at, they didn't look at enough stuff to be able to tell you what's going on. Another problem. Enough to actually see where you're at in that menopausal state, kind of. And then they're not talking about treatment options. They just say this is just normal. This is what's going to happen. And so those are the three big issues that I see on the broad scale when it comes to women in menopause right now. And part of the reason is, those are part of the reasons why I opened up the clinic that I opened up. So, anywho, how it works. So, you have your brain and you have your ovaries, okay? Your ovaries make your hormones. They make estrogen, they make progesterone, okay? Those are our big hormones that we're concerned with, okay? You got your brain and you got your ovaries. Your brain sends a signal to your ovaries and tells them, hey, this is how much of these hormones I want you to make. And then your ovaries make the hormones, and then your brain reads the hormone levels in the bloodstream and then sends more signal or sends less signal depending on what it wants to do with the hormone levels in the bloodstream. And so you have this cycle of the brain sends a signal to the ovaries to make hormones, the ovaries make these hormones, and then your brain sees these hormone levels in the blood and regulates this system. Okay? Easy peasy. Menopause, when you exit your fertile years as a woman, right, your ovaries start to stop working because they're not needed anymore. They just run out of gas. It's just how it works. There's nothing you can do about this. They're just gonna shut down and stop working. Period. It's just something you have to go through as a woman. And so, as the ovaries start to shut down, okay, the hormones that it's making here. I don't know why I angled my camera the way that I did. Let's angle it over here. The hormones that it's making over here, these levels start to drop, okay? Now you can test that, right? You can test for the drop in these hormone levels, okay? So that's something that you look for. as you start to enter that perimenopause state, okay, these hormone levels are going to start to drop. Now, they're not going to drop enough to be able to diagnose perimenopause or menopause. They will drop enough to be able to say, yeah, you're in menopause, but like at that point, you already knew you were in menopause because you're having night sweats, you can't sleep, you know, you're having problems with everything down there. Like, you know you're in menopause when your like hormone levels are that low that you can test it and find out. Like it's a no-brainer. Like you're experiencing all those symptoms. And so those the symptoms of that, super commonly that women come to me and I'm like, yeah, it's like, I mean, look, we're going to do this test, but we don't really need to do this test because it's relatively obvious. Night sweats, hot flashes, vaginal dryness, irregular menses, can't sleep, terrible sleeping, like that's about all I need to hear. And I'm like, yeah, okay, menopause. The vasomotor symptoms are very hallmark of menopause because that is a sign of like crashing estrogen. That's the hot flashes, the night sweats, very menopause symptoms. Or symptoms, I shouldn't say menopause symptoms. Those are symptoms of decreasing and declining estrogen, which is a hallmark of menopause. So anyway, ovaries, as they start to shut down, these hormone levels start to drop. Now, it doesn't just happen like this. This typically happens over the course of a couple of years where the ovaries start to shut down and this estrogen starts to drop gradually, okay? Now, what I like to do is try to catch this early. I like to try and help women before they're experiencing all those symptoms that we just talked about, which is when estrogen's already through the floor and it's like you're toast. You've already been suffering for years at this point. And so part of why this is tricky is because as this estrogen level drops, your brain is going to recognize that and increase the amount of signal that it's sending to the ovaries. And your ovaries are still kind of working. They're still working at like 80% effectiveness, right? Let's call it 80% effectiveness. And so at 80% effectiveness, if they get more signal, they can boost those hormone levels back up, okay? And so it's gonna drop a little bit. Your brain's gonna say, hey, get back to work. It's gonna pop it back up. But then as this continues to happen, ovaries are going to drop and drop and drop. And like, maybe you get down to like 50% functionality. Now you have a huge signal coming from the brain to crank those hormone levels back up. And now that's where you can test for the signal that your brain is sending to your ovaries. And what we're looking for, the hallmark of this, is rising and rising and rising levels of LH and FSH. This is luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. These are the signals, the hormones that your brain sends to your ovaries to tell them to make hormones. So if hormone levels are dropping, the brain says, hey, hormone levels are dropping. It's going to dump more and more LH and FSH to the ovaries to try to tell them to increase estrogen, okay? And so that's where we can really start to see, okay, this is what's actually going on, but we need to see the signal coming from the brain in order to tell if something's going on. Because if the signal coming from the brain is normal and estrogen is normal, nothing's going on, right? But if estrogen is normal and the signal coming from the brain is high, we know that ovary function is starting to decline, okay? And then rather than wait until ovary function declines so much that estrogen, that they cannot support adequate amounts of estrogen and progesterone to make you feel good, right? And then have to fix bad issues, right? We want to try to catch this before you're really experiencing some of the worst of the symptomology, because then all we have to do is just introduce some hormone replacement therapy, which is so easy to do. It's so easy. And it's like $50, $75 a month, which is nothing. Ask, especially like for those of you women who are in the thick of it and haven't had this figured out for yourself or had somebody walk you through this and help you get therapy for it, like it sucks. You would pay $75 a month to not feel like ass, right? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's and so many people, so many women, so many primary care, so many OBGYNs are missing this. And I don't know why. I don't know why they're missing this, because it's as simple as pull an estrogen, pull an LH, FSH, see where things are at, and then just decide what you want to do. And that's, you know, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is there's nothing you can do about the fact that your ovaries are going to shut down. It's just going to happen, right? You just have to decide what you're going to do about it. The good news is there's a lot of really easy things you can do to help that. A lot of that being HRT, right, with progesterone and estrogen. And it's very simple, and it's relatively inexpensive for the kind of outcome that you get from doing it. And now, I'm sure some of you have this question, well, what about HRT and breast cancer? Well, you should be concerned about that because there is estrogen sensitive breast cancer, right? But there's actually different kinds of estrogen. And so there's this thing called O-estrogen. And now this is the type of estrogen that estrogen receptor sensitive breast cancer is sensitive to, is something called O-estrogen. And you can get hormone therapy without O-estrogen. You might be worried about endometrial cancer. You can add progesterone to it. That solves the endometrial problem. And these are things that have been researched. And there's really good research, really good literature on both of these things. And there's also some really strong benefits to HRT. Estrogen is really, really important for bone health. It's one of those reasons that I'm sure you've always heard about, like the risks of osteoporosis as a woman ages. That's because when the ovaries shut down and you have no more estrogen, your bones really have a hard time keeping up and staying healthy. And estrogen is also really, really good for our heart. It's really good for our cardiac health. And so I think that obviously hormone replacement therapy isn't a blanket solution for everyone, but I really want to open up this conversation for a lot more people because I think that there's a lot of people that could benefit a lot from hormone replacement therapy. And it's just not talked about enough. It's not brought up to women as something that can help them. But it makes such a huge difference. I promise you, it makes a huge difference, especially because there's nothing else you can do. The tissue that you had that was making those hormones for you is just disappearing, you know, and there's just nothing that can be done other than replace what they were giving you so that you can feel good. But yeah, so main takeaways are your brain sends a signal to your ovaries to make hormones, okay? This signal is important to test. The hormones are important to test. You need to get a full picture of these things when it comes to assessing hormone balance. And that goes for everything. That goes for assessing cortisol, assessing thyroid, like so many of the tests that are done by primary care, that are done by kind of those first line people that you talk to that are your doctors, like they're just tests that don't give us enough of a full picture. Kind of, it's a good way to think about it is like BMI, right? We all know that BMI is not a great metric, right? But for the vast majority of people, for the general population, it's pretty accurate. And so same with like general lab panels, is it's like, it's going to tell us if you are at risk of dying in the next couple of years from something that needs attention now. But they're not going to give us the finer details of your health, the finer details of your physiology, and the finer details are kind of where the magic happens when it comes to feeling good, having the energy that you want, and achieving the weight loss goals that you have. So that's all I got for you today. I hope that was a informative episode. Again, I've had this conversation with so many women that I just wanted to kind of get this out here to explain this to more people. So if you know somebody that would benefit from listening to this one, make sure that you send it to them. As always, your time is your most valuable resource. And so if you spent that with me today, then I greatly appreciate it. And I hope that I made it worth your time. And if I did, please rate the show. Please share it with somebody that you think could benefit. And I will see y'all in the next one.